Welcome everyone. I know we are all settling down here, having great lunch, and we have even more interesting session on how to demystify generative AI in the insurance industry. So welcome here. I hope you're enjoying the InsurTech Connect. Over the past year, the rise of generative AI, the models, have really introduced a transformational shift in the industry, especially in the insurance sector. As we all reshape how we are going to transform our business operations and processes using generative AI, there are a lot of questions coming up in our minds. We are all eager. We are all ready to go and adopt generative AI, but at the same time we have apprehensions. We have risks that we are thinking about, the challenges that we all have to be prepared for, and how we are going to introduce generative AI in our organizations. So today, I'm joined with a esteemed panel here, and our objective really is to demystify some of those challenges, where you should be putting your early bets on, what you should be thinking about, where you would start, and how would you introduce generative AI in your organizations. So with that, let me just introduce ourselves here. My name is Vikas Sachdeva. I lead the advisory services practice for Quantiphi in our financial services and insurance business unit. Quantiphi, a quick introduction by the way, we are the sponsors of this session here. We are AI first digital engineering company. So we take the data and AI and the power of those technologies in really transforming the insurance business processes. And we look for those transformational opportunities, how to re-envision those business processes and how to realize the real business benefit at the core of the business. I am so thrilled to be joined by this strong and esteemed panel here, and I will let them introduce themselves. So Bhaskar, may we start from you?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Bhaskar, Kalita, BK. I run the financial services and insurance business at Quantiphi. Vikas already spoke about what we do. Excited to be in this panel. The last, I think 4 to 6 months, we've been exploring a lot of generative AI opportunities, having conversations, workshops, hackathons. So, I'm thrilled and delighted to bring all those experiences here and having a dialogue with some of my friends here.
Hello everyone, my name is Farooq Sheikh. I lead the insurance business at Unqork. We are a codeless platform. We work with a number of insurers and service companies and AI first companies like Quantiphi and some of the largest cloud platforms to build solutions for the insurance space.
And I'm Nestor Lopez. I am the Chief Information and Technology Officer for SiriusPoint. SiriusPoint is a global insurance and reinsurance company, and I've been in the industry for a little bit now over 20 years. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me here today. So we are going to dive in, but just one quick logistic item first. We will be taking questions towards the end, so we'll leave 10-15 minutes, and there are mic runners in the room here who will give you the mic, and we would love to take your questions. But initially, I will just kick it off with you, Nestor, if you don't mind. We are talking about generative AI. It's a new technology landscape. Everybody's thinking about how to start. But the main thing is how to harness the power of generative AI. And where does it really apply in the insurance companies? And you come from SiriusPoint yourself. Could you give us some ideas about how to think about it?
Yeah, no, thanks. First of all, I'm very excited about Gen AI. I think this next phase of AI is meant to unleash the creativity of machines, right? And I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the insurance industry. I think the best way to maybe explain it is around the value chain, right? So there's 3 ways in which technology projects add value to the business. One of them is through optimization, whether it's cost optimization, productivity opportunities. Another one is around risk management, and lastly, being able to help with revenue generation. So I'll go in that order. So I think when you think about productivity, think about a world where all of us in the office now have an AI virtual assistant where if you are in the procurement organization, you'll have the ability to summarize contracts more effectively, you'll have the ability to compare to standard terms and conditions. If you are in recruitment or in HR, you have the ability to more efficiently be able to build job descriptions and also be able to map the profiles of potential candidates to those job descriptions. Think about the help desk, being able to ultimately integrate, with some of the procedures that they have and being able to better serve the end users. Just to name a few, but when you think about the opportunities also even in the claims organization, being able to summarize a policy, being able to ultimately identify the coverages more effectively, and even draft responses back to the customers explaining, why you have, accepted or declined a particular claim. So, and not even counting, development, right? The ability to write code is going to become a lot easier. So that's basically on the efficiency side. I think when you start thinking about risk management, I think we find ourselves in a situation where many of us are still probably working on, bringing people together back into the office, or you're working on a hybrid environment. The ability to ultimately train new employees has become a challenge. And I think it's going to become easier with Gen AI. And lastly, I think from risk management, think about many companies still are relying on the underwriting guidelines to be very long Word documents. And today, being able to summarize them, being able to ultimately ensure that you are using it to provide the right oversight to the risk that you're writing, and ultimately maybe even moving it to be more proactive and prevent, some of the unwanted risk based on the appetite of your company to be able not to write them. So I think the Gen AI will play a factor there. And lastly, I'll go with creation. I think that the opportunity from my perspective is, one, the ability to customize, a policy or a product, being able to interact maybe to more advanced chatbots with your clients and customers, and ultimately also help, I think, with your strategy with regard to retention of those customers. So I do believe that Gen AI can actually play in each one of those areas. So, thank you.
Yeah, Nestor, that's an excellent way to open up the session here today, covering pretty much the entire insurance value chain, covering all the way from marketing, product development to really the claims and operations. So Farooq, with your view of the insurance globally that you see, especially looking into claims and customer engagement, what things are you seeing in the industry? How you see that these challenges and how generative AI can really help augment and enhance those experiences?
It's a great question, right? And one thing I did want to build a little bit on what Nestor was saying. The great thing with generative AI is that it applies across the value chain in insurance, functional as well as the business capabilities. And the biggest challenge with Gen AI is that it applies across the entire value chain, both functional and business, right? So you get into the scenario, Nestor, to your point, around foundational readiness, right? And what are the things that you can accomplish with your current foundational readiness across the value chain? What are the quick things? And what are the things for which there needs to be more data and kind of core readiness, right? So just kind of building on Nestor, what you were saying, a number of companies have invested in the foundational readiness, they can do more today. But even if you're in a different scenario, you can do a lot without getting into too much foundational readiness. That's the exciting part of Gen AI. When it gets into customer experience, when it gets into claims, and my honest view on this thing is that Gen AI is the first time, or one of the first times, we're looking at the world through a cognitive automation framework, right? Like everything historically, and I don't want to minimize the capabilities of technology, but robotics and all these capabilities that came before it were always in the productivity and automation space, but less in the cognitive automation space, right? So if you think about the customer experience journey, if you think about how generative AI helps in that space, it makes the experience and the engagement capabilities much more human, right? It provides you the ability to get context, the ability to understand empathy, the ability to interact, whether voice or chat, in a way that's a lot more human, a lot more cognitively closer to what we think of as like a human capability. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things in insurance and beyond, where we're seeing a lot of the applications of Gen AI in the context of customer service, in the context of kind of all the operational digitization and engagement capabilities from an experience perspective. And again, tends to be where it's on the glass, right? Like it's where you're calling folks in through the call centers, it's where you're having chatbot capabilities, it's trying to identify the right combination of context, empathy, and kind of cognitive automation to serve and improve the customer journey element. And then from a claims perspective, and I think Nestor, you mentioned quite a few things, right? Like around where, from a policy and coverage perspective, certain kind of capabilities apply. Fraud is becoming a bigger area of focus. I haven't seen yet a lot of kind of finished outcomes in the fraud space from Gen AI, but there's work being done. Right? So there's excitement around investigation, subrogation, litigation, and all those elements of fraud and claims management broadly. Gen AI can play a role. So the exciting part, we're in the very beginning of that journey. It's the beginning of a marathon, so to speak. There are quick wins, both in experience and claims, and then there's much longer conversations to be had, especially as foundational readiness kind of improves across the area.
That's a wonderful point that Farooq you just brought up, right? Organizational readiness. So Bhaskar, you lead the insurance globally, and you're part of the AI first digital engineering that really started 10 years back before even the generative AI came in. So with all these AI-led transformations that we have been seeing, especially now with the Gen AI angle within the insurance industry, we always talk about readiness aspect of the data. The organizations, whether they have the right data available, are they prepared, and what other, the organizational change management procedures they need to implement from the readiness perspective. So anything that you want to just highlight how the organization think about this shift and how they are ready to adapt.
So there's two aspects. I'll answer the data element first. Right?
Sure.
When you look at generative AI, it's more so specifically talking about Gen AI. You're talking about looking at a piece of information and generating a response out of it at the end of the day. So this technology is not about extraction. This is about abstraction. Right? So with that context, when you talk about data readiness, fundamentally, if the data is in any documents, etc., this technology can go look at a set of documents, pull the information out, abstract, and create a response to it. Right?
Sure.
So on that part, when we're talking about unstructured data, documents, etc., I think the readiness aspect will be around organizing your data, bringing all your documents into a particular place so that they can be accessed easily. Creating a pipeline where you can access documents either coming from emails or any other APIs, etc. For example, let me take an example of underwriting where submissions happen and documents comes in. Building that pipeline where documents can seamlessly be accessed is important. And then post that Gen AI can do their magic. So that's one part of readiness when it comes to unstructured data.
Sure.
Now the other element here is structured data, which are also necessary to take definitive decisions, operational reporting, metrics, etc. So that whole space, which we traditionally call as descriptive analytics, where you build dashboards, reports, etc. That will also get completely revamped, or should get completely revamped, where a user or a power user can come and start asking questions, right? Hey, can I look at my AP? Can I look at this, etc. Now for that, for a natural language question, for a prompt to get converted into a structured SQL and go and fetch the data and then get a natural language response back, readiness is absolutely important. So the semantic layer has to be built for solving problems using structure. So that's the whole data readiness aspect. The other element around organizational change management, beyond everything that you can do in technology, there's a human element to it, right? People using it. So change management is paramount here. As and when you start even a small POC or a pilot around generative AI, start your change management process right here. Start your basic trainings, hackathons. Get your people at least familiarized with the terminologies, how to use, etc., things like that. Adoption will come with those baby steps.
Wonderful. Thank you, BK and Farooq and Nestor. The special part that I really enjoyed in this conversation is thinking through the lens of the entire insurance value chain, how organizations need to be ready, and where the potential use cases are ready, right? So you all touched upon various different use cases here. But I always think about, okay, this is great. We have the use cases in place. We are thinking about these use cases and capabilities that could really drive the business value and benefits within the organization. But at the same time, anytime the new technology comes, right, like the generative AI, the possibilities of these are thrilling to many. But it doesn't come without risk and apprehension and the challenges. So let's shift gear a bit now. Now let's talk about what are the challenges and risks. Maybe we start with you, Nestor, here. What are the top 3-4 challenges that you see within the insurance industry, which is marred with our legacy systems, legacy processes? How can we really implement generative AI in the insurance industry from your lens here?
Yeah, so I'll start, and this is not necessarily applicable to Gen AI, but anytime that you're building machine learning or models, BK touched on it, limitations with the data, the quality of the data, the way in which you are managing that data. But now, specific to Gen AI, I think that there's other considerations. One, we have seen in the news, but the ability to protect the data, to make sure that you don't let your confidential information to be leaked, right? And that is something that you need to address by making sure that you're implementing private cloud type of solutions. But you also have the challenges of being able to establish the right governance structure and the right framework to make sure that you are assessing biases and understanding the risk of the model potentially making the wrong decision and things of that nature, right? Ethical concerns, you name it. Another concern, so I know that you asked for like maybe 3 or 4, but I'll probably just maybe mention a couple more. The other one I think is related to the integration with legacy systems. So I think that's definitely going to be a big challenge. And then lastly, the workforce impact. I think that we all are going to be impacted some way or another, to Gen AI. And I think it's important that we understand, how we manage that. I think it was touched with regards to change management, but how we consider Gen AI an augmentation, a support decision capability to ultimately improve and make us more productive. But those are some of the challenges that I believe we need to overcome to support these Gen AI initiatives.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Nestor. Being in the insurance industry, we always have to think about coexistence with the legacy here. So thanks for highlighting some of those challenges and how do you make the organizations ready. BK, you're in the solutions provider industry. You're looking at the similar challenges in the industry and how Quantiphi and other service providers are helping the industry really overcome those challenges. What are the recommendations would you make that our audience can walk away with in terms of addressing these common apprehensions and risk and challenges, and how do they adopt generative AI?
Sure. So I think, first of all, the apprehensions that Nestor just called out are bang on, I think.
Yeah.
We've had around 70 plus executive briefings, done a bunch of workshops. These are some of the apprehensions pretty much all the C-suite in the sectors about, right? So first is data security. Is my data going out? Somebody else is able to see my code or something like that, right? Those questions are coming up. So there are various concerns that are evolving. I personally believe in the long run, there's a level of comfort that will automatically come in as this tech gets mature. All the large language models providers from OpenAI to Anthropic to Google to all the players who are coming up with this large language models will create those framework that everybody will be confident. In the short term, most customers are raising this concern, and the way we are addressing it is we are looking at frozen models where the concept of private cloud, bring the large language model in, freeze it so the data doesn't go out, you can use it, Obviously, you might lose certain set of benefits of the model evolving continuously and getting better, but use the frozen model concept. What we are also additionally doing in Quantiphi is that we've got a set of Quantiphi pre-trained LLMs, which is basically started looking at large language models, foundational models, and then fine-tuning them for purpose-built use cases, right? I mean, if you talk about insurance, look at specific insurance-specific parameters, fine-tune them, and create those smaller models that can effectively work, and then bring them within the customer ecosystem. And so that the risk of data moving out in the short term is kind of negated. So that's one type of action that we are doing. In fact, a lot of our partners in the hyperscaler world are also looking at frozen models based on the customer ecosystem. They'll bring a large language model in within the customer UPC, kind of freeze it so that they are able to evolve. So those are certain steps that are being taken. On the second point, and I think that's a very, very important point, which is the governance framework that Nestor called out, right? It's essential that responsible AI framework is put in place as and when you are going forward with any kind of implementation. Because your use cases will gradually evolve, and if you're using these large language models for critical decision making, like for example, you're generating a marketing campaign ad, you also, to a degree, you can generate a quote as well based on certain parameters, things like that. It's important to put the responsible AI guardrails, all the fairness, bias elimination techniques, etc., in place as you go about implementing. So responsible AI framework is absolutely necessary. So these are two critical aspects where we are seeing a lot of customers coming in, and then obviously you spoke about the point about integration, and especially as Vikas called out, in the insurance world, the legacy is always going to remain. It can evolve, but it will always remain. So the integration aspects will remain a critical aspect, a critical point in terms of how GenAI becomes seamlessly integrated with a lot of various things we do. So from that point, the way we are looking at our solution, and as we go about implementing it, first of all, first solve the use case, see if it is resulting in an action, in benefits for the customer. Once it is done, how do you provision an assistant or a GenAI, say an underwriting assistant or a claim assistant in the current ecosystem? For example, if somebody is using a code platform, say Guided for their example, can a model or an assistant be used as an integration point within the Guided ecosystem? Things like that, right? So we are, the integration points are extremely important, and as you start a pilot, do start an integration swimlane right away, and don't delay it. So those are some of the recommendations that we can put.
Wonderful. Thank you, BK. So Farooq, you always talk about customer experiences, business operations, and as we are sort of thinking about recommendations side here, I'm pretty sure in our audience here today, we have a mix of large, small and medium-sized insurance companies represented here. Traditionally, what I have noticed is the large insurance companies before, in previous transformation, they were able to get an early start. They had the resources to really go after new technological shift much faster than probably a smaller mid-sized company. So Farooq, generative AI, I believe, is going to democratize that process and create the level field as necessary here. Do you agree with me on that one, Farooq, or what are your thoughts on how this is really going to change how the technology really gets adopted from generative AI perspective?
It's a great question, right? Because at the end of the day, as an industry, we have to move the industry forward, right? Like if only the top 10 can move forward and benefit from a technology, but the remaining cannot, it kind of doesn't really defeats the purpose, so to speak. But there are a few pieces, I think, which are coming together that allow us to move forward as an industry, right? So calling on different kind of conversations there, some of the points, BK, you mentioned, the frozen models that's kind of getting you security, the elements around pre-built LLMs, right? Because if you think about what the hyperscalers build, they're focused on enhancing LLM capabilities broadly, right? But it's folks like Quantiphi and folks that are really focused on contextual and purpose-built LLMs that are going to commercialize and kind of move forward with LLMs that are focused on insurance, right? Whether it's in the context of some of the known pain points, accord forms and so forth, whether it's in the context of specific use cases in insurance, right? So I think about the world as there's an ecosystem of partners that you need to think about when you think about the practical applications of GenAI, right? Like it's starting with the hyperscalers, of course, because they are providing the kind of fundamental building blocks and toolkits. But then you have to kind of think about partners that are investing in pre-building solutions, whether it's in terms of training and pre-training and kind of commercialization of LLM models across the industry. So you're getting something pre-built. Not every insurance carrier can invest in the training and contextual setting and understanding of the LLMs. Of course, a number of the large ones can, but not everyone can. So investing in the ecosystem of partners that are pre-building that capability, right, and are investing in that proactively. Solution orientation, ecosystem and solution orientation, and like just mentioning some of the products we built together with Quantiphi, Unqork, and in this case Google GCP is some of the underwriting capabilities that brings the generative AI capability to commercial underwriting. Like pre-building those capabilities and leveraging that as opposed to trying to figure it out from scratch, right? Because I think we're in this space where the hyperscalers are going to keep going at trying to improve this technology at a pace which I don't think we've seen before. And the industry is going to kind of catch up to that, but continuing to kind of struggle to figure out how to, train these things and enable these things, and that's where the ecosystem of partners is critical, right? So going in simple terms, trying to undertake this journey alone is a tough kind of proposition, even for the most sophisticated insurers. And if you think about somebody who's not the biggest insurer in the world, like you need an ecosystem view as you think about the core partners that will be with you on this journey and learn together and grow together. So that's kind of my view on these things, and that's why even if you think back to the old, like 20 years ago, it was all about every technology vendor, every SI having their own silo, right? And that's why we are in this space of legacy technology, silo data environments and so forth. But I think as we move forward, the whole concept of ecosystems is going to become critical. The bringing together of hyperscalers, leading kind of service firms and engineering firms, as well as technology platforms. I think that's the path forward.
It's wonderful, by the way. I just noticed based on your answer here, we have a service in industry perspective, we have a platform perspective coming from you, Farooq. And Nestor, of course, you're representing the insurance carrier in the industry here. So we all have this network effect of partnerships and ecosystems here, how we are addressing these challenges. So Nestor, from your perspective, if you want to highlight some of the recommendations to our audience around the generative AI and how to think about it, what would be your thoughts on how companies, from your lens of the house, think about it?
Yeah, no, I think that the way I think about it is first, you need to prioritize the use cases. You need to identify what problem you're solving. You need to start thinking about the owners for those particular problems that will actually partner with you to ultimately define success and how you ultimately going to be executing on that particular journey and addressing that particular use case. Third, you need to think about the governance structure. You need to be able to start thinking about who needs to be part of that group, so that you can address all the concerns that have been shared. And lastly, in order for you to be successful, you're going to have to develop an approach that enables you to experiment, enables you to iterate, fail fast type of approach, and being able to apply some of those learnings so that you can ultimately deploy those LLMs and ultimately maintain them, manage them, etc. So I think that those are maybe the high-level approach, to ultimately try to get into this technology. That would be at least the one that we will use.
That's wonderful, Nestor. So I have seen a lot of companies that we talk to, carriers, are really thinking about where to get started, as I said initially. What are those use cases to go after? And what I have also noticed is a lot of experimentation going on, Nestor, to build upon your point. A lot of companies are starting with controlled pilots, proof of concepts, as well as they're thinking about setting up the center of enablement or center of excellence, COEs, as well as generative AI labs, you name it. So from that perspective, Bhaskar, if I may ask you, what are the AI first use cases that carriers can focus on, one, and then how do they go about sort of implementing this? What has you seen work in the industry?
Yeah. So I think Farooq and Nestor both spoke about a few use cases already,
Yeah.
and that's I think in general what we are seeing across all carriers, right? So there are productivity use cases. Obviously, these use cases can be as simple as using, an Azure OpenAI plugin in your OS 365, in your Office 365, where you can see, emails getting generated, etc., things like that. And Workspace, Google Workspace also has the same. That's one part of it. Then the other is obviously your Copilot, where you're looking at code generation, etc. So those are very specific productivity use cases that we're seeing. Then there are business-specific use cases. We spoke here, right from front office marketing all the way to underwriting and claims. From code generation, from underwriting assistant, helping an underwriter understand different coverages, exclusions, etc., so that they can assess a risk better. You can have an assistant. On the claim side, similarly, assistants. We're seeing all those use cases. From an operations standpoint, contact center, that's another area which will see a massive impact with this technology, especially the conversational AI space, where a lot of AI techniques were used already. For example, dialog flow from a Google standpoint, or any other stack, similar stack from other hyperscalers. GenAI is going to change it completely, and there are experimentation going on in terms of how to change the way you respond to your customer. Nestor spoke about bringing empathy, looking at the tonality, responding in that fashion. For example, we have been experimenting with a use case where the customer didn't want definitive responses, but they wanted suggestive responses, so you can change the tonality, etc. So those are use cases that are all out there, and a lot of controlled pilots are happening. I think the first step for every carrier to do here is to first, look at your existing, workforce, understand your current ecosystem. What's the level of maturity that you have from an AI adoption standpoint? What we have seen, organizations which have advanced AI labs or workforces with AI skills, they have been able to move fast when it comes to GenAI. So look at your current base, start putting programs in place from an education standpoint, from a training standpoint, etc. Those are basic. Then comes the pilot phase, where you start with hackathons, which are more controlled sessions where you can have folks experiment, etc. Then go into more deeper pilots, and then eventually, once you see a set of success getting built over a period of time, you have to give that amount of time initially. Then you go into an implementation phase. Our experience working with various carriers is a mixed bag. There are certain carriers who definitely wants to adopt this technology right away, which is basically, hey, I want to get out of the bat, gain some benefits right away, move fast. There are certain carriers who are actually, saying, hey, let me first see how this tech evolves before even I put anything on production. So it varies depending on not just the maturity of the technology, but their current, priorities as well. If you have massive programs going on right now, you want to wait and watch. If you have at a phase where we have done large-scale implementations and are about to begin something new, you start thinking about GenAI being one of the strategic priorities, right? So my recommendation from an implementation standpoint is start small, look at hackathons, look at pilots, etc., but keep doing certain aspects, right? And so that the learning is continuous, and then you can reap the benefits.
That's wonderful. Farooq, I have a two-part question for you next here. And, you always talk about how generative AI, sort of the bionic underwriters of the world, we are hearing so many different terminologies in the marketplace. And you are sort of, you're an insurtech, sort of the startup yourself in the insurance side. How do you see the traditional carriers really adopt this generative AI? How do you prepare your organization? How did they think about this bionic underwriters and whatnot? What are your recommendations for our audience here today?
It's a great question, right? If you think about the reality, like GenAI is a great capability, right? But all the insurers today have this situation where, and Nestor, you mentioned it, like legacy technology, right? So you have you need like two different minds to think about these things. One that thinks about all the problems of legacy technology and the constraints, and then you have a different kind of mind that's thinking about all the kind of opportunities of GenAI, right? Again, historically we used to talk about the two-speed IT, right? We used to talk about like, hey, there's a technology kind of set of issues around legacy technology and how you improve it over time, and there's work to be done, right? And then everybody here probably has a major cloud kind of program underway, right? To bring the power of the cloud to help with certain elements of legacy technology and so forth, right? But that piece has to continue and has to kind of keep going. On the kind of digital side of the house, where you're thinking about quick wins, you're thinking about implementations, you're thinking about POCs and hackathons and learning and growth. I think so one, you have to get into the habit of thinking about the world in these two speeds of technology. Some things that move fast and some things that take longer, and that's fine, right? Those are that's the reality of our business. And then in the piece that moves fast, right? The way to think about that, I think in learning, continuous learning is critical. Upskilling and bringing the organization along is very fundamental, because a lot of times you end up, and we saw this in robotics, right? So in robotics, people would refuse to share a lot of the cases or use cases that could benefit from automation just because of job security, lack of upskilling. So you need that change management element, you need that training, upskilling element. But as you think about the program, I think everybody in this market now is starting, and I'm honestly surprised at how quickly insurers are adopting GenAI. In fact, some of the commentary is that insurers are adopting and talking about GenAI more than banks and some of the other verticals that typically are faster in technology adoption, right? So that's kind of the realization here. The thing that I think as an industry we need to solve for is how do you construct a path around upskilling, around prototyping, around learning that ends up with production outcomes, right? So prototyping to production is the problem that I don't think many people have figured out. Probably it's too early to get it. But broadly as an industry, that's an area where we have struggled, right? We saw that in robotics, we saw that many times with every other technology adoption conversation. The reason it's important this time with GenAI is GenAI, the breadth of the capability, the cognitive automation elements of the capability. Insurance historically is very relationship based. It's very process and people based. These are the kind of things that GenAI can help, right, from an automation perspective and so forth. It's one of those pieces of technology, more than many others, that will fundamentally benefit insurers, our customers, our industry, and move, as we said, right, to move the industry forward. So I think this is one of the pieces of technology that both business and technology teams at insurers need to understand, right? They need to engage with, and they need to figure out a pathway of going from prototyping to production, which I think is the critical problem, especially as you think about the two-speed technology environments and how do you achieve something in the context of a large insurance company.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So I know the audience have been here very, very patient, and they have a lot of questions coming up in their mind. So I think this is the time to start taking a few questions here. If you can raise your hands, and if I can't see, maybe Anita and Nishant, if you can help me with the mic and see who may have questions here. This dais is actually blocking my view to see the entire room.
I think there's a question there.
You mentioned foundation. You mentioned foundational readiness, and I couldn't agree more from a data perspective. I was wondering, in your experience across your client base, where would you place the maturity level in foundational readiness today?
I would say, if you look at, there are different segments of customers. When I talk about foundational readiness, majority of the large carriers have been going through transformation when it comes to getting the data ready. Like, for example, what I mean is, creating modern cloud data platforms, moving data to cloud, having data kind of organized in a particular way so that it can be accessed. So I would say those programs are underway. Few have already completed them in certain domains, and the rest are following. Obviously, these are large multi-year transformation programs. So when it comes to the large carriers, these programs are already underway. Some of the domains have already been standardized, some domains are going on. And I'll give, probably, SiriusPoint is an example where we kind of collaborated and, created the standard cloud data platform to put data in, and obviously other domains are following in. So I would say the maturity is fairly good. Okay, if I can respond in that fashion, I think most carriers are going through a level of transformation when it comes to data readiness. So that's my experience. I don't know if you want to add anything to it.
Add a little bit to it. I would love to get your perspective as well, right? But the way I think about it is the waterfront or the kind of value chain where GenAI applies is so broad, right? So that's why we talked about there's a lot of quick wins. Right? Like example that there are many examples, right? One is like a marketing description of products and coverages and so forth, and the ability to create that in a more automated way as opposed to kind of having to write copy, or the job description example. That does not require you to have a lot of data or foundation readiness, right? Like those type of quick win use cases, there are plenty of them. They save real dollars today from a productivity perspective and can be achieved relatively quickly across all the various kind of value chain components, right? So that's kind of one of the good things about this technology is that it's not a big bang. There's a lot to do in all value chain components, and you can do that today. Now, from a foundational readiness perspective, it tends to be around, and foundational readiness is needed for some of the most advanced use cases, right? Like where you're trying to solve for, like, customer-facing capabilities. You're trying to solve for multiple products or customer 360 or something that requires access to data in many places, right? Like that's the kind of distinction, right? And that's the reason we made that distinction is companies tend to think about all these use cases in one bucket and then don't do anything because some of those use cases require more foundational readiness than they have. So just very clearly, there's a pretty significant amount of work you can do today with the readiness you have today, period. Right? Like there's a lot of value in that work. Now, when you get into some of the most sophisticated use cases, the one that everybody gets excited about and that like solves the ultimate automation problem from a cognitive automation perspective, that's where foundational readiness is critical. And that tends to come in the data infrastructure, data environments, right? And there you need an honest view, honestly, right? You need to kind of say to yourself, hey, have you done the work? Because the risk is that you experiment with Gen AI, bad data will result in bad outcomes, and then you dismiss the potential for this technology without realizing that the foundational readiness is the problem. Really, that's why we're cautioning the bifurcation of use cases and benefits into things you can do today, and you should just do them, versus things that require more or higher amount of foundational readiness, or at least an honest review of foundational readiness.
I what I'll add is that we are going through our own data journey right now, where we were in a situation where data was aggregated in different regional offices, and we're trying to bring all that into a single source of truth. So we have partnered with Quantiphi to go through that journey. So we're investing right now in our strengthening, our data foundation. And in addition to that, we had other places where we have limited data, and we want to be able to. We built a data model also, working with Quantiphi in the cloud, where the intent now is to be able to start bringing that data so that we can ultimately do and improve our analytics capabilities. So we are going through that journey right now, and I think so. I don't think it's uncommon, but it's definitely I think critical in order for you to be able to take advantage of some of these new technologies. So yeah, we're in our journey as well, and we're making good progress, but we're still in the middle of it.
I'll just add one more element here, responsible AI, right? So when you're thinking about foundation is ready or not, you're thinking about the use cases you want to go with. So what we are all experiencing, the question keeps getting asked to us is around the biases, right? The hallucinations and all the other aspects. So what I'm seeing in the industry right now, a lot of things that started from the pilots and proof of concepts are now finally getting into the productions, by the way, in a lot of cases. Start with the internal use cases first. So you actually perfect the biases that impact the hallucination impact and all of that before you go and experiment the similar technology on the customer facing side. So yes, you have to think about different elements of foundation, as BK, Farooq and Nestor already touched about. Right foundation is absolutely necessary, but the picking of the right use cases and having the organization readiness is equally important in that mix. We can take a few more questions here. Sure. There's one hand raised in the front here.
This is, it's an exciting topic, but there is also a sort of a dichotomy that you guys spoke about, which is your legacy systems on one hand that have been there forever, can't really talk to anything, and then on the flip side you have Gen AI and the exploration of Gen AI and the need for speed, essentially, right? How do you bridge that gap, or what have you seen out in the industry as you guys are going out there? How are you thinking of, or how have you done that in the recent past?
It's a very good question. I'm happy to start. Right? So, and just a little bit of context, right? So the group here broadly has spent their lives trying to answer this question for like the last 15, 20 plus years, right?
Yeah.
So with a lot of kind of experiences around how not to do it, right? Like that's probably more of what we've learned than how to do it. The few learnings are people tend to try to solve this problem by thinking about that as a singular problem across the two-speed technology infrastructure that we talked about. The problem statement in the kind of legacy space, right, which is you have too many legacy systems and they all have siloed data, is not about, specifically in that space, it's not about data quality, it's not about data accuracy, it's not about any of those elements. It's purely about data access, right? It's not about data migrations, by the way. It's purely about data access. And historically, that conversation got conflated with, well, why don't we migrate it to something? And with a lot of experience in this space, my personal view, and this is my personal view, is extracting and migrating data is not going to change the quality, the completeness, the usability, none of that. The way access is the key problem in the legacy space, right? In the more kind of digital speed technology environment, that's where you need data foundation, you need data platforms, you need data analytics. So the problem here is more about data engineering. It's more about data sciences, right? In terms of people who can actually, once they have access to the data, create the kind of capabilities, analytics, and things like that. And these are two different problems completely, right? And the problem that I would recommend avoiding trying to solve is the problem of data quality, data migrations, data manipulation in a legacy world. That is where you can spend a lot of calories and not achieve anything, right? Like, and there are many examples of failed programs, multiple 4-5-year, multi-million-dollar programs that don't go anywhere because you're trying to solve a problem that's not the right problem to solve. I don't know if you guys would add.
I think I'll give you a different perspective on legacy and Gen AI. We spoke about that legacy in the insurance space will always kind of remain, while the definition of legacy might switch.
Yeah.
I believe Gen AI is giving us an opportunity to think about reimagining the legacy in a very different way. Looking at legacy operations, while there is a tech asset, we were talking about legacy tax, legacy application, but there are legacy processes as well in the insurance sector, and Gen AI is providing an opportunity to start reimagining them completely. A certain process being done in a certain way for a number of years, you can start thinking about it differently. To give a small example of records keeping, right? I mean, I was talking to one of our clients, and we are right now in a control pilot where record keeping is one of the important functions within an insurance sector. You have volumes of data out there, you need to provide provision information. Now, how do you go to page 5 in a 1,000-page document or something like that? I mean, various kind of information you need to pull out. Gen AI will provide you a very different opportunity. So I think Gen AI and legacy applications, there is this complementary behavior, if I can use that term, where you can now use Gen AI and start thinking about your legacy process and the underlying applications in a very different way. It will take time for things to evolve, but now this gives you a very good opportunity. So I'll give a very different perspective to what Farooq spoke about. Yes.
No, I think that, you covered it. It's a difficult challenge. I think that the privatization is critical, and being able to even just start thinking about the road mapping, right, and interdependencies and things like that, right? Like just bimodal IT, which was the model we were describing in terms of maybe if I'm able to have the capacity or the capability within my organization to actually say, hey, this team is actually going to be working on the operational aspects of IT, but then I have the ability to actually drive some innovation on the other side of IT, right? Like not everybody has that luxury, right? So, so I think that it depends on what are the investments that have been made, where are you in those journeys, are you almost done with those journeys, okay, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it gets, to be a little more complicated. It really depends on the specific situation, but that's definitely something that we all have dealt with, and will continue to deal with as new technology evolves. So great question, Bernita.
I think it's a great question. I think we're talking about people, process, and technology, if I may summarize that way. Is the legacy is in every aspect of that, right? So legacy technology, how you deal with it, legacy process, how do you upgrade those processes, standardize, and of course, how do you make the organization go with it? I think we can take one more question quickly before the end of the session here. I know we are reaching to the bottom of the hour here.
Maybe one question while we wait for somebody, right? So,
Sure.
Of the folks here, like I'm sure everybody's by now heard of Gen AI, right? So that's not really surprising. But show of hands, how many people are actually doing pilots on Gen AI, right? To see some hands in the back. Okay, awesome. Quite a few.
And I think I'll just build upon that question because somebody did ask, how many of you would think your organizations are ready and are on the maturity curve, a little bit on a higher maturity comparatively speaking?
I think the other way around would be not ready is the better question.
Yeah. All right, let's go with not ready first.
Yes, not ready for Gen AI. Okay, so everybody who's not raising their hand think their organization is ready. That's great. That is great.
That was a good one, yeah. All right, so I don't want to hold everyone. We will be around here, by the way, but I just want to wrap it up with, this was a great discussion here today on generative AI, and it's a great testament, by the way, with a show of hands, it looks like the generative AI is in everyone's mind, and it's a transformational shift. It's a business process augmentation and whatnot, but to me, the most powerful ally that I think about from generative AI perspective is to really enable your knowledge workers and workforce to really drive those decision-making processes with the use of data and be able to do it effectively and efficiently, productivity gains ultimately. So that's the ultimate power of generative AI here. Thank you so much, BK, Farooq, and Nestor for joining me here today. And you all have been a lovely audience, so thank you for your time and participation. We will be around after the session. You can take some questions offline. But last plug, Quantiphi, we are at booth number 2666. We are going to be doing the live demos of some of our capabilities in the underwriting process side with the generative AI and AI from 2 to 4 p.m. today. We'd love to see you guys at our booth. So thank you so much.